Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. I am your host, Jasmine Urbina, here in the studio today with my dad and co-host, Alex Urbina. Hi, Dad.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Dad, today we are going to get back to our Parenting 101 segment, things that we need to be teaching our children about living consciously.
Well, we don't need to. We get to.
It's a need.
It's a necessity?
For my well-being, I need to get through this list.
All right.
But basically, we've been going over morals, values, principles, and life distinctions that are important to be teaching our kids. The reason why I'm saying I need to get through this list is because I feel like if I would have known these things at a really young age, I would have had better life experiences by the time I got to my teens, my young adult. Like right now, I feel like I would be just like this, force to be reckoned with, that, nothing was going to bring me down. I feel like, I may be making this up, and I could still be that way. It's just, I think it would be a lot easier if I had, those tools, or I had those experiences at a young age to kind of guide me through.
Yeah, I think there's always that old axiom that, if I knew then what I know now, the game would be over. I would, be just super successful, or I'd be, so evolved that my life would just be at a higher level. And so, helping your kids learn some of these distinctions in life and leadership and mastering self really helps them get the clarity to be able to make better decisions for themselves, helps them understand life a little bit more, helps them understand themselves, their choices, so that their choices that they make in life are more powerful. They're more effective in their life.
Yeah, and what I think is really interesting is that people, they follow that expression. They really feel like if they knew, what they know now, they would be more successful, or they'd be happier or whatever. But, they do know those things now, and they have a chance to teach someone else. They have a chance to teach a younger version of themselves every day, if they have kids. And for some reason, I think parents don't take advantage of that opportunity often enough. And, I don't blame them. There's only so much time in the day, and there's only so much that you can, focus on your kids. But it's almost like, obviously, I think obviously parents want their kids to be more successful than they were. And you have that opportunity to teach them that and to make that path a little bit easier for them.
Absolutely. The distinction that we're going to talk about today is called force. And when you look up the word force in the dictionary, is to make someone or to do something against their will. It's to put your will onto someone else, or force them, or even the act of wanting them to do something that either they're not ready for, or they're not choosing on their own, or the timing's not right. This is a word that I think that if we learn this word and this distinction to a higher level, I think that it'll help us as parents be able to be more influential and more of a parent that invites or inspires, rather than trying to muscle or make or force our kids to be doing something that we think they should be doing.
Yeah, and when I think of like this, I'm really trying to think of a time where a certain scenario where we go into the training room and there's a lot of kids who are like, oh, my parents are making me do this. The training room is a very emotional, it can be a very emotional place and a big breakthrough for a lot of kids. And sometimes I think forcing is kind of a good thing. You don't know that you need something, or you don't know that something's going to help you unless somebody just makes you do it. So as much as it has a negative connotation, I can also see times where it is necessary, or it is beneficial for your kids to force them into doing things sometimes. And it also goes back to, we've talked about this before, my sister and I, we always say to you and Mom, oh, I wish you guys would have made us, commit to things longer. I wish you would have made us stick to sports or instruments or piano, whatever. And as much as we wouldn't have wanted to be forced back then, we would have probably hated it and even hated you guys for it. Looking back at it now, it's I wish somebody would have forced me to do those things.
Yeah, and as a parent that's working on higher levels of consciousness, I look back and think to myself that if I looked at my childhood, there were things that I was forced to do that I'm grateful for, and then there were certain things that I was forced to do that I'm also grateful for, but they at the time that I was being forced to do it, I actually created some resentment from it. And that resentment ended up getting in my way as a young man, as a young adult, that wasn't supporting me in my growth and really helping me go to the next level. So as a parent, I didn't want to have had forced you or your sister or your brother to do certain things such that you caused that resentment towards us and carried it with you for the rest of your life. So it was a dance for us, for your mom and I, to be able to figure out how to figure out within ourselves to be able to influence you or invite you or enroll you into wanting to do something for yourself. And if we failed at that miserably, the last resort would be to make you go or just force you to go. So I agree with you. There are times that you got to pick and choose, and sometimes forcing your kids to do things is going to be beneficial because they don't know how to think for themselves or maybe even see the value of doing something for themselves. And so you nudging them or forcing them to lean that way or to get them, to the gates or the starting point so they can see the value for themselves can be a benefit. However, if we're using that unconsciously as parents as the only tool is to constantly be forcing them, then your son or daughter is going to create such a tremendous amount of resentment and anger and probably some hatred towards you. And then you're going to be wondering why you can't influence them later on as teenagers. So I highly recommend all parents to start learning this distinction called force versus influence. And you got to start learning how to practice this art form called influential, how to be an influence, how to inspire our kids, how to invite them, how to enroll them into seeing the value. And it literally is an art form that you have to practice because the old tactic of forcing your kids has some drawbacks to it. There's some price to pay as a parent if you're always parenting from forcing your kids or muscling them or shoving them into things that they don't want to do. There's benefits from you figuring out how to develop the skills to influence them or inspire them or create the value so big that they can see the value for themselves and then decide to do it or choose to do it on their own. There's tremendous values on the back end. And just you and I having this discussion and talking about it is causing a new awareness for some parents that are listening right now.
Yeah, and I think the reason why I share so many of the conversations that we have, off the air or at family dinners and the things that I felt as well as my sister and my brother growing up was the reason why I share them is because I want parents to see and understand that yes, we wouldn't have seen, for example, we wouldn't have seen you forcing us to play sports as a benefit back in the day. But now I'm like, I wish I could go back and I wish I could, slap you in the face and be like, force me to do this,
Yeah.
make me commit to this, if again, I can say this forever. If I would have known then what I know now, I would have forced myself to do it, of course. But when you're a kid and you're a child, you don't know, you don't know. And that's why I understand why parents force kids to do things. And as much as you're saying, that's not the best way to go about it, influencing and inspiring them obviously is, the most effective course, I think. But I also think that if, like you said, if you force every single time, then there's some repercussions and it causes resentment. And, I can think of a couple times where I was forced to do things I didn't want to do, but because I wasn't always forced, I was more willing to do it or try it anyways.
And if I were to go back, which we can't, but it's all hypothetical,
but this is
right?
nice to imagine.
But if I could go back, I still wouldn't force you. I would try to figure out what was missing in me as a young man and as a father, to try to figure out how to create enough value for you, or maybe sit down with you and explain to you the values that you could benefit from whatever it is that I was trying to get you to see, to be able to take action or to participate or to engage into whatever it is that I saw value for you. And spoke to you more like an adult, instead of, oh, she's only 6 years old, just do it because I said so. I would have spent a little bit more time being patient and more aware and more mindful and holding you to a higher level and had that conversation with you to see if I can enroll you into seeing the value or at least trusting me. and saying, hey, I need you to trust dad here in this moment, that this, whatever it is that you're resisting, if you trust me and take it on or take it as a challenge, I'll walk with you through the process and I'll go along with you and I'll explain to you some of the benefits that you'll be creating for not only for now, but for a lifetime to come. And I think I would have probably try to figure out how to be more of an influence rather than forcing you. I still, I'm still going to rely back on, all the skills that I have to be able to get you to see the value rather than making you or muscling you or pushing you to do something that you probably didn't want to do at the time.
So, like, as far as like influencing goes, like, there's a lot of words that I think, just in that explanation in the last, 5 minutes we've been talking about this one topic is, there's a lot of words like enroll, encourage, influence, inspire, all of those things. I think, like, it just hearing that, it really made me realize that if I'm coming from that place, I think there's more of a chance, for that people are more willing to, in any relationship, for me, because I don't have kids, but, I can see how using those words or having that intention will almost, change people's minds to start seeing it the way that you see it. So, it sounds obviously easier than done. So if I'm a parent and I have a kid that doesn't want to stay committed to, let's say, football, they've been playing football for 5 years. Now they're going to high school and I really want them to be, active, and I want them to stay committed to this. What, like, I guess, other than the intention, what words would you actually use?
Well, it's a great question. And it points out, the possibility that some people are sitting there going, yeah, Alex, but how do I influence them? How do I invite them? How do I transfer or shift over from being that parent that 98% of the time I'm forcing my kids to do things into influencing them or empowering them? And the answer is to start asking more questions. Get creative with your questions. So an example is, if you're 14 years old and I want you to do something because I see value in it and you're totally in resistance, I'm going to start having a dialogue with you and asking you certain questions that you normally ask yourself, or that you're not evolved enough to even ask. So I need to be 10, 20 steps down the road. I need to be 10, 20 years down the road in visualizing the benefits of you playing softball and all the great qualities that you can learn or develop about yourself, and being this confident woman at age 30 because you did 3 or 4 years of playing softball and staying the course and not quitting on yourself. But I got to cherry pick all those great qualities and paint this picture of who I see in the future because you developed those qualities within yourself and you stood the course in softball. But right now, all I have is this 15-year-old daughter that's nagging and crying, complaining, and saying, Mom, Dad, don't force me to do something that I don't want to do. So with that mindset, now I can ask you certain questions. I'm gonna ask them as like planting seeds. Like, let me ask you a question. Give me 5 things that you think you can create from developing within yourself, certain abilities, if you stay the course and don't quit on yourself. And then I get to ask you those questions so you can reflect, think of some answers, and then tell them back to me. When you tell me back those answers and you hear yourself say them, then it becomes your truth. So that's what I mean by enrolling somebody into seeing the value, is by walking them through this journey and helping them discover the value for yourself. Now, if I had the patience, I'd sit down and I'd walk you through that process, and I would enroll you into seeing the value of wanting to go sign up for softball, even though for the last day and a half you've been totally in resistance to it.
Yeah, and sorry, I was thinking, but I really like the question thing. We talk about it all the time, like you go saying like, okay, ask questions, and then they start to feel their answer, or it's their truth. But the one thing I really like about the question thing is that for me growing up, you asking those questions all the time. Now when I'm in, in a pickle and I need to get out, or I need to figure it out fast, and I don't have time to speak to you or to get grounded or anything, I still hear those questions like, in my head. Like, so sometimes I will literally hear your voice ask me that question when I'm in the moment. And I think what is really cool about the question thing is that if you have a set of, let's say, 5 questions that every time your kid has a problem, you ask them those 5 things, when they are in those situations and you're not around anymore, you're not around at that moment, they have your voice ringing in their head those same 5 questions every time they get into a dilemma. And I just wanted to point that out. And one, thank you for asking me all those annoying questions sometimes, but I didn't, you don't realize that if someone isn't forcing you, or someone isn't always telling you what to do or nagging you, those words, they ring in your ear like out of fear. They're in your head. You're like, I don't want to go to that person because I know what they're going to say, versus having these questions that are more empowering and, that really cause us to think and then, act on those. But I just wanted to say that if you're a parent and you are trying to figure out, maybe, it would be cool to just sit down for a couple of days and decide what your top 3 questions are, 5 or whatever, that you want to have as go-to questions. Like if your kid was sitting there stuck in something, what would you want them to be thinking, like that you were asking?
What are the top 3 questions that really plant some powerful seeds for your kids to ponder
no
on?
matter what the situation, they should just be very basic. Like, for example, ours, or the one that like always rings in my head from you is, what are you learning, or what are you observing? And when I notice, either friends or family or someone that's going through like a tough time, I naturally, because I know you're going to ask me, or I'm just now paying attention to it, I start picking things up, like, oh, this person does this and I don't want to do that. Like, this person lies a lot in their relationship. I don't ever want to be like that. Or this person's very loving in their relationship. I want that. So you just asking us over and over again for years, 20 years, it's now stuck in my head that I start looking for those things before I even need to hear your voice and ask.
That's awesome. And that's great feedback. And that's, also a testament to trusting that if I kept asking you those questions, that you would at some point adopt the question asking for yourself and always living in the question ahead of time, rather than having the disappointment or getting in that scenario where you're frustrated and then asking the question in hindsight. It's you being forward thinking and asking the question ahead of time, so you're setting yourself up to win in more cases rather than not. And then another thing I want to point out is, when it comes to the tool of you asking questions to create the value for your son or daughter for themselves, that's not the only tool. Another tool that you can transition from trying to force your kids and transitioning into being an influence, or empowering them, or inspiring them, or inviting them, or enrolling them, is by reminding them of who you see them as, their greatness. So it's always speaking into their greatness. So let's take your brother, for example. When he was younger, wanting to play football, I remember, he was 7 or 8 years old, and he kept bugging me, Dad, I want to play football, I want to play football. And I waited a couple years because I didn't want to just throw him in football. I wanted to make sure that he really wanted to play it. And when I finally decided, all right, we'll sign you up. When we signed him up, as soon as the pads came on and they started hitting, he all of a sudden had stomach aches, right? And we all know that when the stomach ache comes, it's because,
it's probably mental.
Yeah, it's mental. Psychologically, they were going to put pads on and they were going to hit. And so it really literally took 2 or 3 practices where he didn't actually go. It was just me and him in the parking lot, where I got, instead of forcing him like, you're going to put those pads on and you're going to get out there and I don't care. I could have been that dad. But instead, I chose to sit in the car with him for a couple of practices, to sacrifice the practices, to just sit there and be patient with him and let him know that I too know what it feels like to be nervous and to be afraid, and to let the fear come up so much that I've created now this stomach ache. And I walked him through the process, and I asked him certain questions that had him think for himself. And when I asked him those questions, he started to respond with the answers that were convincing him to put those pads on and get back on the field. And it literally took 3 practices that we had a sacrifice of us in the parking lot having those deep conversations for him to see the value of wanting to get back on the field. So a lot of times it's you being patient and asking those questions, but also reminding your kids of the greatness that you see. So here would be another example. You know what? You can quit, and I love you anyways, but you're not a quitter. You know what? I got to get my lasagna. I'll be right back. Remember that. You're not a quitter. And then you go and take the lasagna out of the oven. So sometimes planting the seeds and reminding people of their greatness, like look, you can do that, but I know that you're not a follower. I see you as the leader, the great leader that you are. So you need to decide for yourself whether you want to be the leader or the follower. I gotta go pick up your sister. I'll be right back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because now I'm sitting there pondering with those words. I'm like, wait, come back.
That's right. That's right. So some of the greatest coaching that I've gotten from my mentors was them saying those, being bold enough or having the audacity to look in my face, in my eyes, and go, "You're not a quitter. I've seen you. I've seen the level when you rise to a whole nother level. This champion comes out, and had you not shown me that, then okay, then I would say go ahead and quit. But that's not you, Alex." And then they would walk away from me, and they'd leave me sitting there going, "What do I do with this?" When you speak into my greatness, now I'm excited. Now I'm more influenced and more empowered than ever. So do you think I'm going to quit in that moment?
No.
Probably not. Right now, the percentages go now. I'm not going to quit with you looking me in my face going, "You're not a quitter, you're a leader. And I've seen your greatness, and I've seen you do some amazing things." So sometimes we just need, as kids, we need our parents to remind us how great we are. Or at least we need our parents to speak into our greatness to remind us of what we could be, or what we can be, or we can aspire to be.
It kind of reminds me of, affirmations. Like we sit here and we come up with these affirmations that are true. We just don't believe it yet. And we say it so much early. I say it so much so that I will believe it. And, I think all the time the way I try to inspire myself is in that scenario, I would say, "You're a quitter. You quit all the time. You're not going to quit this." That never works, because then I fall back to, "Oh, I'm a quitter, so it doesn't matter." But, if I instead was choosing a more powerful affirmation of "you're not a quitter," and you just keep saying it over and over, you believe it. But, when you're a kid, you don't know about affirmations. You're not sitting there looking in the mirror every day.
But that's why
yourself.
That's why you need someone else to affirm you. That's why you need a conscious parent, that's going to sit there and go, "I'm going to affirm my daughter's greatness to contradict all of her limiting beliefs." So if you're doubting yourself and you're worried and you got all your fears, and I come in your room and go, what are you pondering about?" "Well, I don't know if I have what it takes to make the team." "Are you kidding me? I saw you pitch. I've seen you on the field. You're the best kid out there." Sometimes as kids, we need our parents to speak into the greatness like that so that we can get excited, because I want to be that person, because right now in the moment I'm doubting that I am.
Yeah, we had to take a quick break, but stay tuned for more of the Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS.
The minute I open my door,
Debbie Morris has a problem.
I say, "Oh my gosh!"
A really big problem.
The dog, the cat, my 3-year-old.
Debbie's house is a mess.
How can one family create this disaster?
Debbie needs Made for You.
I need help.
Professional, residential, and commercial cleaning, locally owned. You choose the schedule: weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or even one-time seasonal cleaning. Call 255-2922. That's 255-2922. Made for You.
Made for You rescued me.
I know the drill. Happy wife, happy life. That's why when she picked the flooring, paint, and cabinets, I simply said, "Yes, dear." But the home theater, now that's my domain.
During the month of May, Party Homes is offering a home smart theater system, including a 72-inch smart TV with the purchase of any new home at Arista, Cresta, or Verano at Aliendo. Don't wait. Special ends May 31st. Visit partyhomes.com/homesmart event for details.
Good morning, honey.
Oh.
What happened?
Trump, again.
Now what?
Our Congressman Steve Knight doesn't do anything to stand up to Trump.
Well, then we need someone new in Congress.
Definitely. The election's on June 5th.
So who are you going to vote for?
Brian Caforio, without a doubt. In that voter info guide we just got, he's the only Democrat who says he'll stand up to Trump.
Let me see that. Oh, Caforio's a Yale Law School grad, and he clerked for a United States federal judge on the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. With that experience, he'll definitely hold Trump accountable when he breaks the law.
And he'll stop Trump's attacks on our health care, the environment, immigrants, and Planned Parenthood.
Well, it's about time.
Caforio's supported by dozens of local officials, even Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom.
I'm sold. Brian Caforio on June 5th.
Yep, Brian Caforio for Congress. Oh, June 5th can't come fast enough.
I'm Brian Caforio, Democratic candidate for Congress, and I approve this message. This is a Rita's Daybreak. There's a huge crowd at Rita's. With so many amazing flavors, every day's a treat. Let's see what folks are celebrating.
I lost my first tooth.
No more training wheels.
My dog photo got 37 likes.
3 kids, 3 activities, 0 meltdowns. There you have it. Layer it, blend it, or drink it with Italian ice and creamy custard. So many reasons to celebrate at Rita's. This has been a Rita's Daybreak. Rita's.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. Before we went on the break, we were talking about force, parents.
So how do I force you out of my house?
Oh, my God.
So do I influence you out of the house or do I?
Yes, because right now you're forcing me out.
So just so you know, those of you that are listening that have young adult kids, you're probably trying to figure out, how do I force my kids out of my house? Or do I influence them out? Do I empower them to figure out how to make a great living and earning and take some risks and get out there and find their own place and flap their wings and figure out who they are?
Here's the problem that I've noticed with a lot of parents, and I think maybe over 90% of parents do this, is they throw like jabs or they throw like little comments like about you moving out and you getting your life together, which is not influencing, inspiring, encouraging, enrolling. It isn't any of those positive things. It's like, it is a form of like forcing, I guess I could say, but most of it is like, if you really want somebody to get out, have a conversation, or even ask and say, like I've had you and Mom say this to me before, where you're like, okay, how can we support you in getting out of our house? So I think sometimes you have to, especially right now, like understand that your kids, your young adults, they're not living in the world that you lived in, at 23. This world is completely different. And I've heard a lot of people like try to fight that and argue and say like, by the time I was 23, I bought my first house and but when you were 23, rent was only 6% of your income. Now it's 43% of our income. So you have to realize that things have changed so much in the last 20 years that, it's not all fun and games anymore. Now it's scary and crying and running back home to Mom and Dad.
I still remember it being scary, even though the world was abundant and seemed like we could get jobs, anywhere we wanted. It was still scary. It was still nervous. There was still forced you out of your comfort zone. But I think that for me, that's what the juice was. Like, I'm noticing like kids in today's world, 16, 17-year-olds are not really excited to go get their driver's license. They're just not. Because why would I, when my mom takes me everywhere and my dad, shuffles me around and scoots me to practice and everywhere I want to go? Or if I want a cheeseburger, my mom will drive me in and out and get one. It's not, back in our days, it was like, Mom, can I go? Nope, take the bus. So it was like I was excited and I couldn't wait to sign up for class to get my permit and get my driver's license and then get a job and start saving to get a car. And I think that at some point as parents, we enable our kids to some degree, that we take away that hunger, that desire to go out and go get some of those things, to be independent and to be confident and to figure out who we are. I think it's just a sign of the times, right?
Yeah, I also think, at least in our situation, for those of you who don't know, I'm trying to move out, and my dad is forcing me out, and my mom. No, but I think as much as you want to see your kids go off and succeed and, not order pizza on your credit card anymore and, stop playing video games on the couch, all of that, as much as you want to see that, I feel like it's a dream or a fantasy that parents have made up that their kid is capable of going out and doing those things. And I'm not saying that they're incapable. I'm just saying that you need to be realistic about the last 20 years that your kid has spent on the couch and the last 5 years. It's like I think parents, they expect like as soon as your kid turns 16, 18, 20, whatever, they're going to just jump up and be like, all right, time to get my life together. I can't wait. I'm so excited. Bye, Mom. Bye, Dad. I'm going to do this. And that doesn't happen if you don't raise kids who feel that way or have that excitement or have that drive. And so I feel like I bring this up a lot, like the parents having unrealistic expectations for their kids after seeing them be a certain way for so long, that maybe it is time to start influencing or inspiring, or maybe call you to get some help, because I really genuinely think that parents, they've made up this thing like that their kids are going to want to jump up and go. But really, when home is so nice and cozy and comfortable and affordable, why would we?
And that's why the forcing or the influencing and where that line is drawn there is because kids want to hang out in their comfort zone. And where is the comfort zone? It's right
home
there.
With
it's
mom
right
and dad.
there at mom and dad's house where things are paid and food is made and everything's abundant. And so that's why, there is the parents that get to realize and have that awakening and go, wait a minute, maybe I'm making it really easy for our kids to just not have that hunger and not have that desire to want to go out there and get out of your comfort zone and take a risk and put all of your paycheck to rent and eat, soup for the rest of the week because, it's what you're up to doing and it's forcing you outside your comfort zone. And I think that's what it might take. But I am excited for you guys. And I'm really inspired by both you and Adrian's commitment to get out on your own and get into your own life and start being responsible, even if you do have to eat, rice and beans and tortillas or whatever.
Well, lucky for me, I love rice and beans and tortillas.
Well, we'll see. We'll see on those days if we get phone calls going, hey, Dad, you got some barbecue you doing this weekend?
Yeah, I really think that kids right now, we are very lucky to have parents that do, enable us a little bit. And I think that's the whole thing about your guys' generation is that you guys are a little bit too loving, a little bit too giving, as a result of your parents being too tough and too stern. And, and I'm hoping that this next generation, as we get older, we can find, that happy balance between the two. But we probably won't. We'll probably be just as, loving and soft as you guys. But I am really excited to start seeing, my friends and my family and siblings and everything start to go off in the world. Because at this age, I've seen so much, I've seen so many breakdowns that I'm really excited to see the breakthroughs for a lot of people. Because this is a really tough age. And I think parents either forget or they have no idea because they make up that it's so easy. Back in your guys' day, you guys were going out there getting handed jobs left and right. I'm throwing elbows trying to get an interview. I have to really fight for interviews and jobs and opportunities. So we'll see.
In that process of throwing elbows and fighting for jobs, you're developing the next level of champion inside of you. You're developing and growing, and whether you stop and look at it and acknowledge it or not, I will, because I can see a difference in you. I can see the progression because I'm on the outside looking in. You're on the inside looking out, and a lot of times you can't really stop and look at yourself. But, through those challenges, you're developing grit and perseverance and confidence, and that's those are the goodies. Those are all the great things and the great qualities that as a parent I want you to develop within yourself. But they're not going to happen if you're not outside your comfort zone where it's scary and you're worried about how you're going to pay the bills next week because your paycheck is a little bit short. Though all that struggle is what creates the champion. That's where champion is created, is in those moments where you don't know how to pay the light bill tomorrow. It sparks a fire inside of you to get the wheel spinning, to be more creative, to think outside the box, to start generate an additional income. And so I'm excited for you, even though for you it's really, you're nervous and you're scared. And I've always told you that. I've always got your back as long as you're taking shots. As long as you're swinging for the fence, I don't mind you striking out.
Well, thank you. Eyeballing the next, our next topic, and I really want to get to it.
So the next distinction is forgiveness. What does forgiveness mean to you?
Okay. I really feel like forgiveness for me is it's a process. It's not just logically thinking I should forgive you or anything. I think it's an actual emotional process that I need to accept to be able to move on.
Okay, I like that. So what process would you call it? What do you need to accept in the process of forgiving someone for something that they did to you, or they've wronged you, or they didn't hold their end of the bargain? So you feel a certain way that something happened to you by someone else. So what is the acceptance in? What do you have? What's the process of acceptance for you?
I think it's a lot of things, but I think one of them is accepting that I might not understand. So I think especially for analytical personalities, we want to understand and we want to know why. Sometimes there is no why, or sometimes the why just doesn't make sense to me, that I can ask 100 times the same question. Why did you do this? Why did you do this? And they can give me even different answers, the same answer over. It doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense in my mind. It's almost like it's like you don't want to accept it. You don't want to forgive. It's like we need to understand. So I think for me, forgiveness, the accepting is accepting that I'm not going to always understand why.
Okay. I like that. For me, the acceptance lands on, I accept that what happened, and it's in the past. So it's accepting that it happened. It's also accepting that it's no longer continuing to happen because I learned from it. But it's also accepting that it's in the past and it's not in the present moment anymore. So forgiveness actually for me is a tool, not for the other person. It's a tool to help me surrender it and let it go after I've accepted it. So it's a process of first accepting that it happened, 2, accepting that it's in the past and it's not here anymore, and then 3, forgiveness is a tool to help me surrender all of it, let it go, so that it frees me up to be in the present moment, to be here now, having let go of whatever resentment or anger that I was still dragging along with me. Because that anger and that resentment is not affecting the other person. It's actually hindering me. Its toxicity is affecting me. It's affecting my mood, my behavior. It's interrupting my happiness, my joy, my freedom. So for me, forgiveness is a tool to set me free, to surrender all that, let it go, put it down the drain so that I can free myself up to live a powerful life moving forward.
Yeah, and the thing that I think is really interesting about forgiveness is that I am more of a preventative person. Like, I want to prevent things from happening so I don't have to go through all the emotions and then do for the forgiveness thing, and I just want to prevent things. And while I was going,
how's that working out for you?
It's terrible. So I'm going to explain why I think forgiveness is so interesting. Is when I was going through school for real estate, one of the things that they were pointing out a lot, all my professors, no matter what, they would always say one of the most important things is realizing that there's going to be family or friends who you thought were, you guys were tight, you guys were ride or die, whatever, that just don't use you as a real estate agent. Mm-hmm. And you have to just be willing to accept that. Mm-hmm. And so they would always say that. And then I would be like, yeah, whatever. Like, my friends love me. My family loves me, And then when it happens, you're like, I mean, for me, as a real estate agent, especially out here, who struggles, to find their place and everything, when you see somebody that you know or love or cared about or thought you had that friendship with or whatever, go and buy a home or sell their home with another agent, it's sad. But through that process, I realized how easy it is. Like, well, I mean, it's not easy to forgive, but I realized how easy it can be to forgive. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be challenging. I don't have to understand why they chose somebody else. So I'm really glad that I've had to go through that process a couple of times, because I feel like it's taught me like to forgive a little bit easier, in the sense that, like I said, I just have to accept that I don't need to understand why.
But you make it sound like somebody else choosing a different professional to help them with whatever decision they're making for their family. It's almost like you make it sound like they did that intentionally to hurt you. And this is why I love this topic, because I learned from a good friend of mine who's a specialist when it comes to grief. She talks a lot about sometimes we put guilt on ourselves, or we feel guilted, or we kind of take somebody's decisions that they make as they wronged us, when that's not really what their intention was, or they didn't do that with intention, or they didn't do it purposefully. It's just a decision they made, and then we decided that was hurtful. We decided that was unloyal. We decided like, oh my God. It's almost like you put a decision they made, and you allowed that to affect you to where you took it what's called personal. You took it personal because they made a choice and it wasn't you. And then you decided that was personal. And then you got offended, you got hurt, you got let down because you had an assumption that, of course, they're going to use me. That's my aunt. Of course they're going to use me. That's my cousin that we used to run around and I used to comfort her. Why would she not use me? So it's like you made up that story or that belief that they should use you, right? You had that expectation. And then what comes with expectations is we get let down. And then we get disappointed, we get hurt. So now in order for you to get past it or to heal yourself, you have to create this forgiveness. The crazy thing about all of what I just said is all stuff that you made up. It's a whole thing that's created on your side. It's got nothing to do with the other person.
Yeah, I also think that if you're going to think...
Unless you said, hey, auntie, I'm a real estate agent. Will you promise me that you will support me and use me for every transaction? And she says, absolutely. You got all of my transactions for the rest of my life. If you made an agreement and then she backs out on it, then I would say, okay, you're warranted to feel hurt and disappointed and then go through the process of forgiving. But if you never created an agreement in the beginning and you made an assumption that everyone's going to want to use you because you have this great relationship with them, there's a possibility that you created all on your own.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes as far as the creating everything on your own. That goes for literally anything in the world.
That's right.
You can say, oh, okay, you could be dating someone and say, okay, we never made it, I guess, official. We never said we're boyfriend and girlfriend, but you seeing somebody else going on a date with someone else, now I need to go through the process of either moving on or forgiving you.
Yeah, that's right.
So
if you got hurt, if you chose not to take it personal, and you chose not to get offended or not to get hurt, then you don't have to forgive anybody. But because you decided or you chose to take it personal or be offended or had the expectation and then got let down, then now you get to clean yourself up and heal yourself through the act of forgiving them.
Yeah, and I really, really do think that it's okay to be hurt, when all that stuff, when anything happens. I think that's why forgiveness is so great, because the logical part of us wants to say, okay, I should forgive this person because we weren't really dating, or because they also know another real estate professional, or because, there's a lot of reasons why analytically it makes sense to forgive someone, but it's still an emotional process. It's still allowing yourself to get hurt to say, okay, now I can forgive from the heart, instead of because you can say you forgive someone because you're supposed to and not really believe it.
Right, but what you're describing is the forgiveness for them. For me, forgiveness is for myself. It has nothing to do with the other person. So a lot of times, some people get hurt because people intentionally hurt someone, and they will hold on to that grudge all the way to their deathbed, and they don't realize that they're holding on to that grudge because they think that forgiving is about. Forgiving the other person is about saying that what you did is okay, and it's not. Forgiveness is just a tool to set me free so that I can surrender it and start living in the present moment and getting off of the past. And this is what plagues us as human beings: is we carry all of our past and we drag it with us to each new moment, tainting each new moment of pure joy, pure gratitude, pure happiness, because we bring all of our stuff from the, I'll call it stuff, all our stuff from the past, and we taint the new moment. And what would it be like if you can just start living in the present moment and be here now, surrendering all of your past?
I could go on forever talking about this, and I probably will, so it'll just be after this show. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Inspirational Parent. Oh, we're not going out. Then I could keep going on and on and on for another 5 minutes. We'll be right back. Stay tuned for more of the Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS.
Santa Clarita Philharmonic has begun its season of free concerts. The SCP is a non-profit community-based volunteer symphony orchestra comprised of local musicians from throughout the Santa Clarita Valley who are dedicated to providing quality classical music for the residents of the Santa Clarita Valley. Like the Santa Clarita Philharmonic on Facebook or visit santaclaritaphilharmonic.org for more information.
The Santa Clarita Artists Association has a new gallery in downtown Newhall on 6th Street between Main and Railroad, right across from the Canyon Theater Guild. The gallery features our members' paintings, sculptures, and one-of-a-kind handcrafted gift items. Whether you're an art lover, buyer, or an artist wishing to join, visit our website at santaclaritaartist.org, come to our free monthly meetings at Barnes & Noble, or stop by the gallery. For upcoming events and exhibits, check us out at santaclaritaartist.org. We make visual art visible.
Marston's Restaurant has been a Pasadena landmark, voted the best breakfast in California by the Food Network magazine. Discover Marston's Santa Clarita location, open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Marston's also has a fantastic catering menu that adds a delicious twist to any event, and they cater picnic dinners for that memorable romantic date. Experience Marston's on Newhall Ranch Road and McBean, or log on to marstonsrestaurant.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS. Before we went on our very short break, we were talking about forgiveness. And one of the things I wanted to bring up just in our last couple of minutes is that, you know, Dad, before we went on the break, you were saying that forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with, you know, us being able to let go and forgive for ourselves.
That's for me and the people that I help understand that distinction, and they choose to see it like that. It's just a choice to see it like that. It's not like that's the way it is in the universe, or that's the way it is as the truth. It's just another way to see it, so that it empowers you and it frees you up to live in the present moment. It's just a different tool.
Yeah, I think that one of the, I guess, greatest benefits to forgiveness when you're looking at it from that point of view is really just to experience peace, to finally be at peace with yourself and even that other person. Because, I mean, I feel like I know some people who have forgiven, forgiven for themselves and everything, but they still just don't want anything to do with that other person. Well, how does that work?
Well, that's a simple one. Let's say you had a friend that all of a sudden started to go dark, and they just started to now be hurtful because they're in pain. And so everything about them is hurtful. When they speak to you, when you're around them, everything is like a jab towards you, and it's just painful to be around them.
Yeah.
So you're going to forgive them. You're going to forgive them so that it frees you up to be able to live in the present moment, so you can surrender all the things hurtful things that they've done to you. It doesn't mean, though, that now just because I've forgiven you, I'm going to choose to keep putting myself in that toxic relationship. If anything, I'm going to learn that until you learn how to be in a relationship with me in a healthy way, then I'll stay open to having that relationship be the way that it was once before. But until you learn that, until you develop in that, I'm not going to engage in that, because I'm not going to put myself in that place to have you continually be unhealthy in this relationship and take shots at me.
Yeah, and here's the thing that I don't want to use the word hate, but here's the thing I dislike about that is that when you do take yourself out of a toxic situation and you really do at least for me, I genuinely forgive that person. and I express that, they feel like forgiveness means that I have to take them back, or I have to be in a relationship with them, continue our friendship, when as much as I forgive them, that's not true. Like moving forward, like you said, I want to.
So then why don't you explain that to them? If you've identified that, oh, Tommy doesn't get that my forgiveness doesn't mean that it's a start over again. So maybe I need to explain to Tommy, hey, Tommy, I 100%, 150% forgive you. And whatever happened. I get it. I've made mistakes too. I know you chose from where you chose, and I'm off it. I'm over it. However, the relationship between us has shifted because of that, because there's some things that I've learned. So don't expect us to go back to that same condition, that same framework that we had, because before that, I trusted you wholeheartedly 100%. And until I learn that you've developed and grown and that you have a certain way that you live your life where I can trust you at that level again, we might have to work back up to that again. But it's not, my trust with you is not 100% anymore. I'm a little bit guarded, and I think it's warranted based on some of the choices that you made.
Okay, so more importantly, this is a better question. I'm not done with that one, but this one's better, and I want to do it before we leave. If you are in a relationship with someone that you have forgiven, and you want to continue that relationship, but the same feeling goes, it's like I trusted you wholeheartedly. You betrayed that trust. I feel like that trust has been betrayed. I still want to work on this. Where do you go forward
100%,
from there?
100%.
You have to go back to 100%.
100%. Yeah, because you can't forgive them and then say, look, no harm, no foul. I get it. I've been there too. Think about if you made a mistake and somebody says, I forgive you, and I still want to be in a relationship with you. Do you want them to come guarded now at 60? Or do you want them to give you the forgiveness and then come back at 100 again?
I want them to give me the forgiveness and come back at 100, but I understand if they don't.
No, okay, I get that. But some other people won't understand that. That's why you got to explain it to them. You got to have that conversation and have that dialogue and lay it all out in front of them and let them choose. They might not choose to go, well, I don't want to be in a relationship with you if you only trust me 60%. It's either all or nothing. And then you guys get to make that decision.
All right, we have to have a conversation after the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're here every Friday from 12 to 1 p.m. right here on your hometown station, KHTS.